Hi, I'm Jinhua Zhao, Professor of Citizen Transportation at MIT, and thank you for joining the MIT Mobility Forum, organized by the MIT Mobility Initiative. Today, the session is a special one, and Zhao Moavenzadeh and myself will give everyone an update on what's been happening about the MIT Mobility Initiative. We founded the initiative 3 years ago, and I want to give you an update on what we have achieved and what we're doing now, and also particularly gather your input on where should we move towards, right? So we'll do a presentation at the beginning by myself, and then John will describe what we've been observing about the 10 major trends in transportation, right? Then after that, we'll have a breakout session so everyone have a chance to talk to each other, describe some ideas, and we'll gather these thoughts in a Google Doc, and then we'll report back to everyone afterwards as well. I see, David Ghoston, thank you for joining. Joe Ferrer, thank you for joining us today, right? So here, as before, I'd like to start with warm up in the chat. So everyone invite to type your organization, location, and time, right? So this is, I'm at MIT, Cambridge, Massachusetts, 12 no, right? So that we can see a little bit of everyone's background here. Great, thank you. So next, let me do a quick poll to see a little bit about the participation and your role. Let's see, I will launch the poll here. So there are two questions. One is, so how many sessions have you attended the MIT Mobility Forum? Up to today, we have run 86 sessions. So here's the choice between 1 to 2, 3 to 5, etc. Yes. Well, there are people attending more than 51 times. Wow, we should give you a award on that. We indeed should tell you this. Thank you so much. Yes, we have hardcore supporters here. Thank you. And the second question is your primary role as a student, faculty, staff, industry, government, NGO, others. Right. Great, 90 people participated. I'll give 3 more seconds for everyone to finish your 3. Okay, we'll end the poll and share the result. Right. That's quite an interesting distribution. It's rather evenly, 1 to 2 times, 3 to 5, 6 to 10, 19%, 11 to 20. There are a few, that is many. Thank you so much. This is really, I think that's the reason this forum is successful. And the primary role, student about 18%, faculty staff 27, industry 31, government 12, NGO 4%, others 8%. Great, thanks. All right, so I will start with a brief introduction about why are we doing this, right? So let me see if I'm sharing this correctly. Okay, yeah. So maybe I'll spend a few minutes describe what's the motivation behind the MIT Mobility Initiative, right? I'll start with a few like basic principles and the reason on this, and then John will describe the key industry trend in transportation we observed things 3 years ago. I'll start with this. You know, throughout human history, we as a species collectively invented a fantastic set of technologies that help us move from A to B. But the question is, have those technology progression translate into the betterment of the mobility system, right? So given all this fantastic technology, we would have hoped that we live in a very effective transportation system, right? Efficient, equitable, clean, safe, all those goals, and we will think these technologies will add up to those things, right? But also, of course, if you live in Boston, that's what we observe, and have these technologies really translating to the betterment of the mobility system? The short answer is no, right? And this is also not unique to Boston. I don't know how many of you have been to Beijing before. This is what you see in Beijing. This probably see many, many cities in the world, right? Very similar story here. Right? But I think a few of you may have been to the city in the 1980s. This is the same city 40 years ago. And what do you see in this picture? There are bicycles, pedestrians, public transit. And by the way, they're electrified public transit, right? So how do we call this picture today? We call this as low carbon travel, green travel, sustainable travel, active travel, healthy travel, all the beautiful word that the transportation professional create. Well, this is kind of the dreamland of a transportation planning, right? But while the city in the past 40 years strive itself to move away from this sustainable paradigm to this mostly motorized, very similar metropolitan area like everywhere you see. So over the 40 years, technology clearly improved, right? But can we say today's system is better than the 1980s even, right? So here, I would say transportation as a profession, we are utterly confused. What is success? Right? I think that's one major reason we want to have this MIT Mobile Initiative so that we can have this serious discussion about this. Right? And this argument is true while today we have electric vehicles, autonomous vehicles, connected vehicles, urban air drones, space technology. All this technology will continue to develop. But I think if we don't ask this question, what is success? We may end up with the same thing. 20 years later, technology continue to improve while we still see the picture just like this. Right. I think that's the one key motivation for us to develop the Mobile Initiative and try to address this. So what is success? Right. Here, I will argue that previously transportation, you can think it's just solving congestion problem. Yeah, even for that, we didn't solve it very well. But there are more than that these days. Transportation being framed as a sustainability problem, as a social justice problem, as a personal identity problem, as an urban creativity problem, and as well as a public health problem. Right? For me, what's interesting in transportation is from one side, we have all the exciting technologies, computation, data coming at us. While at the same time, we have a much richer, much broader set of goals being imposed upon transportation. So I think it's this juxtaposition between technology, data, and the value changes that makes transportation really interesting. And also, because of this complexity, also requires a collective effort from really a different set of disciplines to look at it. So what will define the future of mobility? And many people will have a very different answer. Each of us have our perspective. But I will argue two things. One is behavior. The other one is computation. On behavior, let me give a few examples. We ask questions like, is travel social? Is travel emotional? And is travel time absolute? Is travel perceptional? Right? All those questions is the behavior type of thinking. Right? Here, for example, in the business side, Tesla will care about the EV range anxiety problem. Lyft or Uber will talk about ride sharing pricing problem. This Waymo or Cruise will talk about AV adoption problem. Mass DOT probably thinking, or US DOT maybe think about congestion charting. Well, all these business decisions, you can translate into a behavior perspective, look at them as behavior questions, right? So that's one side. But the other side, we try to bring this behavior perspective along with these transportation technologies happening, right? And also use the computational foundation as a way to represent the world differently, explain it, predict it, control it, and create it. Right. So that's the kind of general structure, bringing behavior science and computational thinking together. That's one way to look at what we can do in the future. So how is MIT contributing? From one side, MIT has a proud history of contributing to transportation, both research, scholarship, education, and impact on the industry. Right. Here, we list a few professors. There are actually more than 70 professors, senior researchers at MIT studying this, and also a strong group of students interested in transportation. But of course, if we offer one a critique of the MIT transportation research community, which is we lack any sense of coherency, right? Each of us is doing different things. And if you come to MIT, you get overwhelmed with the 50 different labs doing different things. So that's 3 years ago, we decided to, why not we should come together, right? That's why we founded the MIT Mobility Initiative. But here, what we'll say is the MIT Mobility Initiative try to offer a moderate degree of a coherency here, right? I want to emphasize the word moderate level, not too strong or too high a level, because we don't want this to become a rigid structure that's everything transportation. The main spirit of MIT is bottom up, is having this messiness there, right? So we want to have some degree of coherency without generating a rigid administration structure on that. So that's what we set up from the institutional point of view. So a few things. How is MIT contributing, right? There are really 3 different categories of effort. One is solving short-term technical problems, very narrowly defined, very specific.
Yeah, I would appreciate knowing in advance. You've already disconnected all my services. I just got kicked off my phone calls. So that's all right. So you're going to pull it.
Let me try to, please help me mute that.
But they haven't connected the.
I can.
John Witt, go on mute.
Okay, I'll mute Al, and I will unmute myself here, right? Yeah, sorry for the interruption. So I'll continue. So the first one is this short-term technical problem, right? That's what MIT has been very much famous for. We're good at technology, different labs working on specific areas of things, right? But second area I also want to emphasize is to develop medium-term platforms and capacities, right? For that, that's one level up than an individual contribution here that takes multiple years, a collective effort between MIT and potentially collaborating organizations, companies, the government agencies, right? So that this technology develop and become a capacity or platform that can really continue to survive and sustain itself in the agency. So that's the second type. And the third type, MIT often, I think, aim to do, that's often MIT how to differentiate from many other institutes, is to catalyze strategic, institutional, and social changes. That's a much broader set of ambition, but MIT is often having this objective and often deliver this level of contribution in that, right? So given today's time, I will skip the specific thing, but I want to mention that we have research, education, entrepreneurship, engagement at 4 different pillars. Each of them are doing all sort of activities. Here, I will skip this particular project. Later, we'll have more time to discuss, but really to emphasize how do MIT serve the public on this, right? So here, am I sharing here? Yeah, I'm sharing this. So how MIT is serving the public, right? That's a question we really try to answer. Besides we're educating our own students, besides that we are offering solutions to the industry, to the government, how do we serve the general public? For that, let me just offer one observation. For me, this is quite a dangerous disconnection between the high-level technology development at MIT or Stanford or Harvard, all these top universities, talking about quantum computing, nuclear fusion, gene editing, deep neural network on one side. And the other side, if you're a layperson on the street in the US, you'll find none of this I understand, none of this I can engage. I more and more develop this notion of disconnection and disengagement, right? So I really feel the danger, and MIT sees that. As one effort we're trying to do is to not only MIT should educate our own students, but also inform the public in general, right? For that, we do think transportation is a very good media because transportation connects to everyone. It doesn't matter your socioeconomic background, doesn't matter your educational background, you feel connected to transportation. So we're using this as a platform to engage the institute with the broader public on this. So one specific format of doing that is this MIT Mobility Forum that many of you have been contributing. This is the list of speakers from the spring session, and we're now running the fall 2023 session. Altogether, we have run about 56 sessions over 7 different seasons there. And each time we have like 100 people participate. The email list goes to about 14,000 of them. But here, you know, in the past 3 years, we've been doing this honestly in a rather ad hoc fashion, right? So I think of the good speakers, so I invite them, depending on the schedule. So here in the summer, we did an exercise. We try to organize these 86 sessions into some meaningful themes. So that way we get it. The first theme is a safe, clean, safe, and inclusive mobility. That's kind of the 3 key objectives of the mobility initiative. Under that, we'll see we have 12 sessions on decarbonization, 7 of them on safety, security, and resilience, and 6 of them on society and equity. Then the second aspect is how do we connect to the community, policy, and cities? So there are 6 sessions on communities, 10 on cities and pedestrians, and 10 on policy. Right. The other side, on the third theme, is the computation and the behavior analysis. There are many of us doing work on control, optimization, many of us doing machine learning, study behavior, future work. And then the fourth aspect, I would say, is the more classic categorization, looking at different technology, different systems, like aerial mobility, automation, public transport, shared mobility, and supply chain. Right. Now, we also try to add one on theme 5 as an investment, finance, and entrepreneurship. We start to have speakers about this. And then, as I mentioned before, this fall, we're introducing 3 sub-series. One, a women leader in transportation, which we'll have next week. The other one, we are the deal, talk about investment in mobility. And third one is on the financing from the VC or startup in mobility perspective. All right. So if you're interested, you can go to this mmi.mit.edu/forum. Most of the information are there ready for you to look at. All right. So there's other set of events, etc. But before I give the forum to Zhao to mention, I would mention that we'd like to get your input into this forum on 3 questions. The first one is what topics in transportation should MMI focus on? Second, if you have one wish for your local transportation system or the global transportation system, what would that be? Right? Be as specific as possible. Right? 3, who should we invite to speak at the MIT Mobility Forum in the future sessions? Right? So please start to think about this question. Later, after John's presentation, we'll have a breakout room session so everybody can talk to each other, and then we curate all this your contribution and input into a Google Doc, and then we'll report back. Right. So I will pause here and then invite John for the second part of the presentation. John, please.
Super. Okay, thanks so much, Jinhua. So we thought to actually stimulate the conversation, it would be interesting just to reflect a little bit on what we think are some of the kind of the key trends that are driving changes in surface mobility. So we're not bringing this to the skies and we're not bringing this to the seas. We're really talking about surface mobility. And just before I open, just 3 quick caveats. Number 1, these 10 slides for these 10 trends were put together over 3 hours this morning. So this is very, very coarse, very back of envelope. And again, the purpose is to kind of stimulate your thinking. Number 2, there's inherently a US-centric bias built into these slides. And I think we're very interested to hear from those participants outside of the United States. And number 3, probably just because of my personal background, there's a bit of an automotive bias here. So very, very curious to hear from those who have expertise in urban planning, public transportation, etc. Okay, so with that as a caveat, Jinhua, can you see my screen?
Yes, very well.
Great, okay. So let's go through these trends. So the first big picture item here is what I would call a kind of geopolitical bifurcation between the, let's say, the US-European camp on the one side and a Chinese-dominated camp on the other side. Why am I talking about politics and geopolitics? Because it's incredibly important for the industry structure within transportation. So we've seen a tremendous transition over the past, since China became the largest automotive market in the world in roughly 2008, the Chinese industry has advanced significantly from sort of imitator to innovator. There's control over critical battery materials, and there's sort of political reactions. So, some of the headlines that capture this is the recent announcement by the European Commissioner to investigate, Chinese subsidies of electric vehicles. We've seen a tremendous controversy here in the United States with Ford announcing that they would collaborate with CATL, which is the largest supplier of electric vehicle batteries in the world, an amazing company based in China, but a kind of political backlash unfolding over that. And I can tell you just from in Munich a couple of weeks ago, China was really the big story, with Chinese electric vehicles arriving in the European market with great products at great prices. So that's one mega trend. Second mega trend is about what I would call the backlash against automated vehicles. So, we've seen autonomous mobility sort of proceed through this Gartner hype cycle, rising to the peak of expectations and plummeting into the trough of disillusionment. And one thing that we have seen here in the United States is more of a dialogue about, why do we want autonomous technology? What purpose does it actually serve? We've seen a lot of controversy as the test operators are being pulled out of these vehicles in cities across China and some cities in the United States. And we've had some unfortunate incidents. And so it has created a sort of backlash. At the same time, we've seen capital, sort of moving away from the sector. This chart on the right sort of shows the deflating of the frothiness, if you will, within the sector, and sort of a increasingly difficult climate for investment. Having said that, this is a powerful technology, and I think many of us would agree, if deployed correctly, can achieve profound progress toward those basic objectives of safe, clean, and inclusive mobility. So that's something for us to consider. The third trend is around shifts in the actual automotive vehicle architecture itself. This term software-defined vehicles is very much front and center in the global automotive industry. When I started my career 30 plus years ago as an engineer at Ford, we made engines, we made transmissions, because we considered that core business. It was strategic for the company to build those things. And today it's very much about the battery is core business. And increasingly, the software architecture, and even to some degree, the SoC chips that are installed in the vehicles, is starting to be considered core. All of this is to bring more capability into the vehicle and to make it more like your personal phone, more customized, more functionality, etc. So this is another sort of big trend that we've seen in the automotive space. A fourth trend is what I would call sort of the micro-mobility, 2 steps forward, 1 step back. I think micro-mobility has just tremendous capability to enhance and to help us achieve those safe, clean, and inclusive objectives, particularly within our cities. But here I just highlight this, this New York Times article from reflecting on what happened in Paris this year, I think captures it very well. You have the headline, which is, Paris becomes the first European capital to ban shared electric scooters. But then you have the context of the subheadline, which is, but the city is very, very actively adding bike lanes, scooter lanes, people are using them. And, there's this sort of safety context. And that's when you have, we know that when you have a mixed fleet usage, when you have mixed speeds, that is a safety consideration. So, Every cyclist knows that a protected bike lane is a world of difference from an unprotected bike lane. So there's an infrastructure component to this as well. And as we know, infrastructure takes longer to implement sometimes than, you know, the vehicles themselves and the companies providing those vehicles. So to be continued where we go with micromobility. A fifth trend is around this movement toward true dynamic pricing. So, you know, the economists in transportation have always told us that we're not accounting for the full cost of the negative externalities, the hours lost in congestion, the lives lost on our roads, the damage to our children's health with air pollution, and not even to mention climate change. So how can we come up with a better way of actually capturing that true cost? And, you know, dynamic pricing, which is a reflection of the actual level of demand to use a precious resource. And I would consider the space that a vehicle, whether it's a bicycle or an oversized SUV, occupies on our city streets, that is a precious resource, and it should be costed appropriately. So we see, you know, I would call maybe congestion pricing the godmother of dynamic pricing, but, you know, we see movement. Many cities in the world have implemented this, and now here in New York City, we're expecting finally next year to have a toll to enter into Manhattan somewhere between $9 and $23. So lots of action, lots of development on that front. A sixth trend would just be relating kind of an update on where we are in this. Are we post-COVID? I think so, maybe not. Let's see. But this stabilization of the, you know, the working from home situation. Jinhua collaborates with Nick Bloom over at Stanford on this working from home research, which is a great source of survey data. So the chart that you see on the right just shows we really have hit a kind of stabilization in this hybrid model, where maybe we spend 2 or 3 days a week at the office, and maybe we spend 2 or 3 days at home or working from a third location. So, you know, lots to dig into here about other changes in mobility demand. We've seen air travel recover to almost pre-pandemic levels on a global basis this summer, but business travel has not. Okay, a seventh trend would be about what I would describe as kind of a hesitation in the electric vehicle market. So, you know, I had mentioned before the security of supply issue with the, you know, the cobalt, the nickel, the graphite, lithium, the things that go into batteries. You know, it's tough it takes a long time to build and open a mine. You know, we're talking like 20 to 30 year cycles here. So there's a lot of catch up that has to happen in that space to supply those materials. Not to mention to ramp up the gigafactories to build the batteries, to hire the talent, all of this stuff. So there's these massive amounts of investment that are taking place to build these battery factories. But at the same time, we have these challenges with public charging infrastructure, something that we at the MIT Mobility Initiative have been looking at closely for a while and trying to understand why there is such poor reliability. And we do know the reasons behind that, but we have seen some really interesting developments, particularly starting in May with Ford announcing that they would adopt the Tesla electric vehicle charging standard, the North American charging standard, and then GM quickly following suit, and a number of other major automakers as recently as yesterday with Hyundai, a major provider of EVs, signing on to be part of that Tesla North American charging standard here in the United States. Trend number 8, the rising costs of delivering infrastructure. This is inherently a US issue, but you know, we're spending $1 trillion, a historic moment here in the United States, to invest in enhancing our infrastructure, including our transportation infrastructure. And the question is, are we going to get $1 trillion of value out of that? Or will it just be 100 billion or maybe 300 billion? Because it's far more costly to deliver infrastructure here in the US. There are a number of reasons for this, ranging from the talent and the capacity that we build into our public agencies that procure these massive projects. For example, state departments of transportation. Do they have the right people? There's a challenge around our procurement requirements and the rules and how the system works. There's a challenge around even the democratic review process, that citizens have the right to object and say, I don't want this project, which is fine, but it takes time and actually adds cost. Labor costs. There's an array of issues. There's no one single reason for this, but it certainly is an important issue and something that we've been watching closely. Trend number 9 is around sort of the outflow of capital from the mobility sector. We saw unprecedented levels of capital investment into mobility during what I would call the SPAC wave of 2020, 2021. I mean, if you had told me, hey, John, there's going to be this global pandemic called COVID coming up, and by the way, during that thing, oceans of money are going to flow into mobility technology. If you had told me this 4 years ago, I would have thought you were crazy. But in many ways, that is what happened. And now we see sort of the pendulum swinging the other way, with large amounts of capital flowing out of the mobility space. And then finally, just to close, just thinking about that social contract moving forward. Here in the United States, public transportation agencies across the country are struggling to hire the right people, even just bus drivers. And we've seen this sort of epic UAW strike, which has highlighted some of the, let's say, very controversial aspects of CEO compensation here in the United States. I think there's a real dialogue to be had about sort of, again, what does the future of work actually look like? And what is a sort of fair and just form of compensation? This goes way beyond mobility and way beyond transportation, but it seems like it's an important consideration within the mobility space. So with that, I turn it back to Jinhua.
Thank you so much, John. This is a really brilliant set of summary and very efficiently bring out the key trend that we observe. So for the rest of the time, what we hope is that what I presented and John presented particularly triggered many of you to think about, right? What should be the topic that we care about, right? What are the one that the society, both financial and intellectual, paying attention to now as a positive question versus what this financial and intellectual resource should be put in as a normative question, right? So those are the type of things we'd like everyone to contribute. So let me remind everyone, this is the questions we'd like to think about. What topics in transportation should MMI focus? Focus meaning we can fund certain research, we can bring people to speak at the forum, we can educate students with different curriculum. That's what I mean. So what type of topic we should inject in this, right? Second one is one wish for the local transportation or global transportation, right? Third one, who should we invite to speak at the forum? So for that, I would require people to be as narrowly defined as possible in the sense, more specific, right? So the broader term, like we want transportation to be safe, clearly, I mean, we do, but here, the more specific you make a statement, the better to guide the actual design of the future session on that, right? Meanwhile, in the chat, I just typed a link to the Google Doc. Let me show you here. So which is this one. I see many of you already in it. If you go into the click on the Google link, you will see this Google Doc that has the 3 questions. Feel free to just add your thought to it directly on this, right? Okay, so please do get into the Google Doc before I send you to the breakout room, right? So I created a 15 breakout room, about 9 to 10 person each. We'll have 10 minutes so that everybody can speak out, talk to the group of what do you think as the response to the 3 questions here, right? So I'm opening the room now here. So about 10 minutes will bring everybody back, right? But do have this Google link with you so you can put your thought into it. Oh, Alex Grusin, great to have you here. So I'll send you to a room as well to participate in this conversation.
Hi, Jinhua.
Oh, hey, how are you, Hamza?
Good. How are you? I just joined, so I have no context. So I'm not. I'm just going to
Okay,
stay here
sure,
and
sure,
catch up on the
yeah.
document. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, of course. Yeah. Again, for people who are in the main room, I encourage you to go join any one of the breakout rooms to have a conversation about what topics that the Mobility Initiative should emphasize. Hey, John.
Hey, Jinhua. I
Yeah.
couldn't hear anything in the breakout room. I don't know what.
Oh, let me send you to somewhere else then. Yeah, let me. You mean the whole room has a video issue, audio issue?
I wasn't sure. Yeah, I think so. Marty was in it as well.
Oh, which
There,
room
the
are you?
whole room. Yeah,
Which
room 5 didn't work.
Oh, okay. Room 5. Okay, so everybody back. So let me send you a different room there. Yeah. So maybe, yeah, so that's interesting. Only room 5 doesn't work. That's okay. I just send everyone in room 5 to another room. Marty, I send you, I forget one of them.
Are we almost all back, Jinhua?
Yes, let me check. There's few. Good. Sorry to interrupt the very interesting conversation. I popped into a few. Seems that there's a very kind of warmly discussion among many of the rooms. So several things to conclude. One, thank you for putting your response to these questions. For the third one, who should we invite? Please do keep adding names on that. For that, let me just share with you that so everyone have the link to this Google Doc. Please keep adding the new names so we can try to invite. Also, if you have some particular connection or contact, let us know as well so we can reach out to them effectively. In terms of implementation, in response to these suggestions, right? We cannot respond this fall because the fall schedule is already confirmed, but we will absorb it into the spring 2024 and the future years of this design for the mobility forum. As a quick advertisement, next week we have this woman leader in transportation panel. We have Laurie Chase, who's the CEO of ITS America, Hyung Park, the Spy Pond partner, MIT corporate member, Victoria Sheehan, the executive director of the TRB, and Polly Trottenberg, the deputy secretary of US DOT, join us. So hopefully many of you will join as well, right? So the last few minutes, there's a very important part of today's forum, which is to announce the winner of the Dan Eva Ruse thesis, right? So here there are many of the students and the professor. They're here, and of course I actually see Dan's here as well. Thank you so much, Dan, for joining us. So let me present this Dan and Eva thesis award here. So this is the 2021 to 2023 call. First of all, I really want to thank Dan and Eva for the generous contribution to MIT to make this happen. I think many students really appreciate it. And also all the faculties who participated in the evaluation process on this as well, right? So this award goes to all the PhD student at MIT, right? It's the notion of transportation and mobility is broadly defined. So it's not just limited to the MST and the PhD transportation program, to any department transportation program, as long as you work on the thesis related to the transportation topic. Any mode of transportation, either passenger or freight, either theoretical or applied, either technical aspect, social aspect, economic aspect, really broad defined on this, right? So for that, we've been running for this the third one. The first one, let me recall, Dr. Shenghao Wang won the 2021 award, and Dr. Gabriel Krendler won the 2018 award. For this year, first of all, let me announce that there are 3 professors very generously helped in evaluating the award. That's Professor Amadeo Aldoni, Alex Jaculette, and myself run as the evaluation committee. And we shortlisted 5 students. So I really want to congratulate all 5 students being recommended by the MIT faculty and being shortlisted for this award. They are Angela Akolsela, Hanjiang Cheng, Baichuan Mo, Runak Basu, and Kartik Gupala Krishnan. So congratulations to all 5 of you for being nominated by the professor and shortlisted for this award, right? So lastly, let me present the winner as well as the honorary mention. The winner is Baichuan Mo. His research towards a resilient public transportation system, effective monitoring and control under service disruption. Right. I also would like to congratulate 2 honorary mentions. Runak Basu on planning of sustainable cities and coordinating accessibility improvement with housing policies. And Kartik Gopala Krishnan on the topic of modeling and control of the network system application to air transportation, right? So today I will only announce the award. I will invite the winners and the 2 honorary mentions, 3 of you to come back to the forum in December, actually share your dissertation in substantial format with the broader forum. For now, congratulations Baichuan, Runak, and Kartik, and also their advisors. That's right. With that, also want to thank Dan and Eva again for making this award happen. So for today, we'll conclude today's session. and hopefully see you, many of you, in the next week's discussion. Have a good weekend.